So welcome everyone to another episode of What's the Buzz, where we explore the trends, challenges, and technology shaping today's ERP ecosystem. I'm excited to be joined by Padraic, Director of Sales, and Sara, Director of Partnerships from Clarus Tax Technologies. Clarus helps organizations simplify sales tax and exemption certificate management by connecting tax processes with their ERP systems. Thank you both for being here. So excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, so today's topic is often one that kind of falls under the radar until it becomes a major problem: exemption certificate management. For many organizations, exemption certificates are treated as paperwork that gets filed away and forgotten. But as companies grow, expand into new states, and modernize their ERP systems, managing those certificates can become much more of a tax or compliance issue. So it can really impact customer onboarding. It can also impact order processing, audit readiness, finance operations, and even the overall customer experience. So today we're going to explore why more organizations are treating exemption management as a strategic business process instead of simply an administrative task. We'll discuss the challenges companies are facing, how these issues affect the ERP and finance teams, and what a more connected audit-ready process looks like. So are you ready to get started? All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
first question. What should ERP and finance leaders care about exemption certificate management today? Or I should say why? Why should they care about it?
Yeah, exemption certificates aren't just a tax issue. They impact revenue, they impact the customer experience, audit risk, and efficiency, right? So as businesses grow, managing certificates becomes more complex. Since the ERP is where tax decisions happen, having an accurate, up-to-date certificate data stored in there helps to ensure the right tax decision is made every time when you're invoicing for your clients. So you can see it's really important from a few different angles. They're not just little pieces of paper in a file cabinet, right?
Right. Although, yeah, and that's how they get forgotten because, we put them in the file cabinet and they're good for, and you just forget, which unfortunately happens all the time, I'm sure.
Right. Like if you're a manufacturer and, selling, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in sales of things that are being sold for resale and you didn't collect tax on it, those exemption certificates are as good as gold saying why you didn't collect that sales tax so you can understand, the importance they carry.
Right. Okay. So what do you think the biggest challenges organizations face with manual certificate management?
Well, I think the biggest issues are scattered documents, invalid or expired certificates, and then time-consuming manual workloads, right? To kind of wrangle all of that. Teams spend hours chasing paperwork, and leadership often has little visibility into whether exempt sales are actually supported by valid documentation. So you can kind of see how those points could spiral into bigger issues if not managed
Mhm.
correctly. So, that's kind of the biggest part of it.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
sure. Oh, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Sorry, Amy. And to Patrick's point, in certain states, they can even expire yearly. So it's so important to have it in that system. Sorry, Amy. What were
Oh,
you
no,
about to
no. I was
say?
just going
Yeah.
to say auditors must love it when people aren't, keeping up to date with those.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And,
Easy.
kind of to table on that, you know, with most states, exemption certificates, some states they never expire, but a lot of states they expire either every 1, 3, or 5 years, right? So that means that you're having to go through and get an updated copy of that exemption certificate or a resale certificate every year, right? And if you're a large company and you're like 95% of your sales are tax exempt, and you've got thousands of customers, you can see how that would be cumbersome. And even for the states that have like no expiration, if your customer changes anything like about their business that changes the information on that certificate, then it's invalid and you need to go get a new one. So, we see mergers, acquisitions, all types of things happen all the time that change the nature of the way a business operates. And that can change the validity of your exemption certificate. So those are all things to consider. Just kind of shows a lot to track, especially from the expirations times and then if businesses change their information are.
I don't know if, Sarah, you here, but I feel like, Patrick, you're breaking up a little bit, or I can't
Yeah,
hear
just a
you.
little bit. It's not bad though.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I keep rocking and rolling. I think that maybe a little slower, but you're touching on some good points.
Sorry, was it like the internet connection was unstable or?
That might have
Oh.
been it, you know. You sound better now though. So where were you?
I was just rattling on about all the different ways that it's can either expire, valid, acquire, the merger, changes their name or whatever, all those reasons that certificates to be up as well.
Okay, so why is connecting exempt certificate management to the ERP so important?
It's important because an ERP integration lets certificate data drive tax decisions in real time. And it helps prevent charging tax when you shouldn't or missing tax when you don't have correct valid documentation. So it just reduces duplicate work. It helps to reduce compliance issues, and then it keeps customer records in sync and creates a much stronger audit trail.
Yeah, and who wants to, I mean, automation, right? I feel like today everybody's all about automating whenever they manual processes that they can, just to make their jobs easier, stay compliant, obviously, and reduce risk. And just who wants to manage it? I mean, I don't think I would ever want to manage it. So why not automate it?
Right. And people like to, automate it to clean it up and make it more efficient. Because when something's like so small and mundane can lead to larger issues like in an audit, or if you're just, cleaning up records and, you can't find one, something that's just easier to kind of, clean it up initially and have a good process in place rather than have them scattered about like in, file cabinets and then OneDrives and, oh, we've got some over here on this other drive. And then, when the time comes, if you need to show them or whatever, it just makes it easier to have a process from the get-go.
Which kind of leads to, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, it's
Oh,
me.
Murph. Hey, Murph.
So let me just interject. If you've got a POS attached to your ERP, all those people out there operating the POS, they have no idea. So unless there's an alert or an advisory that this particular client's exemption certificate is now invalid, they're just going to accept their word for it, the customer's word that they've got an exemption, which they may very well. They just don't have the new certificate on file. The same thing's true when you have an e-commerce engine on the front of your ERP and people are putting in orders over the internet. And, unless it forces them to update their certificate information, again, they're just going to enter it and mark that they're tax exempt.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, definitely things to
And,
think about.
adding to what William just said, that kind of brings up another great thought on top of that. Like, a lot of times, sometimes salespeople are the ones that have to collect the exemption certificate, right? When they're in the process of closing a deal and bringing a new customer on board. And it's good to have a tool like implemented at your company that makes it easy to collect that document, but also to validate it. Because there's been times where, say a salesperson is closing a deal and the customer says, by the way, we have an exemption certificate here because we're tax exempt, and then they give it to the sales rep and they're like, cool, and they just take it. And then 2 years down the road, they find out that we're actually supplied with an agricultural exemption, not a resale certificate or the proper exemption certificate they need. So having a tool that can actually help validate that as well is a really important thing to consider.
Yeah, definitely. So, what business risks do companies face when they don't have a good process in place?
And the biggest risk is going to be audit liability. Certificates, companies may owe unpaid taxes, penalties, interest, I mean, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Also creates customer disputes, which can kind of sour relationships. It can delay orders and just create unnecessary work for teams to scramble to find those documents to fix errors, whether it's going through an audit or doing customer facing work itself. So those are kind of the main risks that you see a lot that customers are dealing with clean certificates, exemption certificates.
I also think if someone, say, goes on vacation or leaves the company and they were in charge of the whole exemption certificate process, right? If they we're doing it manually and leave, and now someone else has to figure all of it out, that's going to take time and be very not, I don't think it would be very useful of their time and or money to figure it all out. But if you have something in place and someone leaves, you're all set, because you just have to keep things going. Obviously know that it's happening, but keep things going and know that that you have everything in place to be able to manage them.
Exactly. It's so important to have, a tool or a software that everyone can use and understands how it works, rather than having the one accounting person who has the tribal knowledge of managing all the exemption certificates. And like you said, they go on vacation or they leave. No one knows where they are or, how they were managed. So that's it. Yeah, that's a great point.
All right. So last but not least, what does a modern automated...
Let me interrupt you one more
Yeah,
time.
go ahead.
We've been talking about this pretty much like from the customer standpoint of we are the seller and we have these customers and they have exemption certificates. But there's another side, and that is we as the business probably have an exemption certificate to buy raw product, raw material that we manufacture or that we resell, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just as important to keep our certificate current. And a lot of times those businesses don't have a clue even where their certificate is.
Right. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
And Patrick even mentioned something to me yesterday, and we were just talking about how it goes towards the gross thresholds in many states. And that's one thing people don't think about, exempt sales counting towards a gross threshold. So you might even have to file $0 returns and register in a state over non-taxable sales.
Yeah, it kind of, ever since 2018, when we had the South Dakota versus Wayfair decision, it after that occurred, it created economic nexus, right? And you get a lot of manufacturers, resellers that kind of think like, well, that doesn't really apply to us because we don't, sell to end users. So we're not collecting sales tax even in states where we have nexus. But the thing they've got to be careful about is that there's a handful of states that have gross sales thresholds, right? So they don't care if it's a taxable sale going to an end user, or if I'm selling pallets of steel to another manufacturer that's going to use that in part of their manufacturing process. If you've hit those numbers in some of these states that have the gross dollar thresholds, then you got to get registered. And then you've really got to make sure you're collecting those exemption certificates, because now you have nexus in the state. You're most likely filing a $0 sales tax return, but you're having to report business activity. So it's kind of like one of those things where manufacturers are like, well, it doesn't really apply to us, but kind of does. And you really need to make sure those certs are organized and clean.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
All right. Last but not least, what does a modern automated exemption certificate process look like?
Well, you just come buy our software. It takes care of all that for you.
See?
But no, I mean, a modern process just makes it easy for customers to submit certificates digitally, right? So no more calling or faxing or mailing or whatever. We want to make it easy to, validate them automatically. And then, we want to be able to connect approved data to the ERP and then track renewals over time, right? So you're not having to manually do that. You'll just have the software that says, hey, these certificates are going to expire in the next 90 days. Let's go ahead and create a campaign to send out to those customers so they can just easily upload a new certificate in the system, and we can validate it, and we're good to go. And then the result is just faster onboarding, especially for newer customers, right? It's, there's a lot of documents and forms you have to, obtain when you're bringing on a new customer. And then, fewer manual tasks, and then just better audit readiness and more, confident tax decisions. And, for the businesses that do, implement a tool to manage these certificates, it makes everything smoother. Like it gives you a peace of mind. It makes the customer experience better. And, if you are going through an audit, a lot of these, like these certificate management tools, you can give them the specific views into what they need to see specifically for what they're asking for, as opposed to like, here's our 3-ring binder of all of our certificates. Have a look through it. It just makes everything like a lot more efficient when it comes to dealing with anything exemption certificate related. So I think those are kind of the key points, in my opinion.
Yes, and like you said, you know, not only do you make it easier for you, but you make it easier for the customer on the other end who you have to collect this from, make sure that is all happening simultaneously, and they don't all have to worry about keeping it up to date either, because you're doing that in the background, and they can make sure that they're compliant with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when volume is in play. Like I feel like many of these companies have like thousands of certificates.
Right.
It's not, probably wouldn't even fit in a binder, you know. It's so you have to have a process to Amiee and Padraic's point.
You don't want another file cabinet, that's for sure.
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Oh, go ahead.
yep, sorry, no, that's it. I was
No. All right. So what are some questions that finance leaders should ask to see this process?
Yeah, well, a couple important questions are, where are your exemption certificates being stored today? That's probably the first and most obvious one, right? Then the next one would be, well, can we quickly produce documentation for an auditor when needed? Or even if you're doing an internal audit, right? It's like, can you easily access those with ease? The third would be, are certificates validated before the customers are marked as exempt, right? So we talked about earlier, you can go supply any type of exemption, but there's a lot of different types of exemptions. So making sure that you have the right one on file for that specific customer is really important. And then how are expiration dates and renewals monitored, right? Like is someone just setting reminders in their Outlook calendar about certificates expiring, or do you actually have a system that keeps track of that for you, like AccuCert? And then the last one would be like, does our certificate process integrate with our ERP and sales workflows? Just to make it easier for the sales reps, the people running those POS machines, like William mentioned. So yeah, it's just the end of the day, it's just to make everyone's lives a little easier and not have to focus too much on what most would consider mundane task.
Yes, yes, definitely. And time consuming.
Yeah, and not fun.
No, and not fun, not fun. That's for sure.
And then you've always got that AR clerk who says, well, our certificates are always filed in their invoice file for the year in which their certificate was issued, which might be 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like you mentioned, some are 1, some are 3, some are 5 years. Like who wants to keep track of that either? I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, it's a lot,
Yeah. All right. Well, key takeaways today, everyone. Exemption certificate management is not simply document storage. It affects tax accuracy, audit readiness, customer experience, and the scalability of the organization's ERP processes. So if an auditor requested all your supporting exemption certificates today, how confident would your team be that it could provide the complete and valid information? That is the question. And I want to make sure that you know that there is a process and there is something in place to help you automate it. But yeah, so exemption certificate management is definitely something that gets overlooked sometimes.
And just to add, Amiee, like if anyone watching this, has ever had a thought that kept them up at night, exemption certificates, or, that's something that's come up in like business discussions, hit us up. This is what we do all day, every day. It's our specialty. Love to help you. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, yeah. So thank you very much for joining us today for the What's the Buzz August monthly chat. I can't believe it's already August. Time does fly and summer's almost over, and I'm not happy about it because it's my favorite time of year. But anyway, we will see you in September. So thank you everyone for being here for the Tuesday What's the Buzz monthly chat. Have a great day.
Thanks, Amiee.